Hi there, I'm Danny Flex and welcome to the latest edition of SecondsOut ReFLEXions. We're here every Monday, 4:30 PM to talk about the boxing action of the weekend just gone. And this week I'll be focusing on week 2 of Fight Camp, which saw a new IBF featherweight champion crowned at the second time of asking in Kid Galahad's case. But he is now a champion of the world, brushed off not only that contentious decision loss to Josh Warrington in his first title try, but also 18 months of inactivity as if it were nothing. To dominate game, but ultimately outgunned Jazza Dickens, forcing a corner retirement, a sensible corner retirement at that, at the end of round 11 in their main event at Matchroom HQ at the weekend. Jazza, I gave him 2 rounds, both within the first 3, but once Galahad got into his rhythm, there was no stopping him. He threw, I think, well over 1,000 punches in those 11 rounds. Obviously, I think something like 25%, maybe more connected, but it was enough, and it doesn't really tell the whole story. It was an incredible performance from him. His judgment of distance, the way he dictated the pace and manner of the contest, the way he manoeuvred Dickens into the positions that were more favourable for him, all impressed, and just gradually broke him down. Jazza was cut early on from a clash of heads, which didn't do him any favours, and also the repeated standing on his foot. Obviously, Jazza's a southpaw, Galahad switch hits, but when he was in the orthodox stance, he often stood on Dickens' foot, which is something that happens a lot with orthodox versus southpaw clashes, but it did seem like it was happening too often to just be a coincidence. And eventually, in round 10, when it was too little to make much of a difference, or too late, sorry, to make much of a difference, Galahad was deducted a point, but I don't think that's why he won the fight. Just everything. He was superior in every area as it transpired. He won their first fight 8 years ago with a late stoppage, but he was probably more dominant this time around, even though it went a lot longer, or a bit longer, in fairness. He, from the opening kind of 3-4 rounds after that, he always seemed to be a step ahead, pushing Jazza back, manoeuvring him into corners and setting traps, and just his variety of punch was really good. He never really unloaded hard shots with any terrible menace, but he just kept chipping away. As Andy Lee memorably deemed it on commentary, it was death by 1,000 cuts. He was just chipping away, throwing in combination. Jazza would land some eye-catching shots, particularly the southpaw left over the top that smashed into Galahad's jaw on a couple of occasions. But whenever he did that, Galahad would storm back, land 3 or 4, put some real attention to the body as well, hooks to the body right from the start, which must have helped in sapping Dickens' strength. And it was just an overall very intelligent, disciplined performance, and speaks well to his fitness as well, because even though he'd been out the ring for ages, he's known Galahad as a gym rat and was able to set an incredible pace and stick to it. And in the end, Dickens' corner sensibly pulled him out. And now we look ahead for Galahad potentially to a rematch with Warrington if he's able to get past his own rematch against Mauricio Lara next month. But also perhaps unifying with the other champions. I know he said, Galahad, after the fight, that he hasn't got much of an interest in facing WBA regular champion Lee Wood, until he's elevated, if he's elevated to WBA super champion, because he doesn't consider the WBA regular belt a genuine world title. Neither do I. But there is a case there because of Kanzu being the champion previously and how long Leo Santa Cruz has not defended the super title, that Wood is upgraded, and that's what I'd like to see. Him against Galahad. Wood has trained at the Ingle Gym in the past, so that would be an interesting... there's probably a backstory there that could be played upon, and a unification between 2 Brits, which we'd like to see. So let's see how that one pans out. But there's other fights out there. Gary Russell Jr. is obviously WBC champion, so we could maybe see that at some point as well. But for Galahad, although it's come late in his career, the world is now his oyster. He can be a polarising figure. I know he's not everyone's cup of tea, but I've always liked him. I first met him just over a decade ago in the suburbs of Paris, of all places. I was there reporting for Boxing News on Danny McIntosh's bid for the European light heavyweight title against Thierry Carl out there in Levallois-Perret. Adam Booth was there actually as well. I think he was overseeing some sparring of one of his fighters at the time, but he came to watch the show. And Galahad was there with McIntosh and that camp, because McIntosh was trained by the Ingalls at the time. And I actually first met him in the changing rooms when I was interviewing Danny Mack after he'd won the title. Great fight, by the way, if you ever get a chance to watch it. I don't know if it's on YouTube. It's a cracking contest and a really good finish from McIntosh. But yeah, getting back to the point, Galahad was there. He was 5-0 at the time as a pro, and he told me solemnly, sincerely, that he would be the next big star from the Ingle Gym and the next world champion. Well, I'm sure they've had other world champions since then, Kell Brook among them, but he could yet be the next big star. Only one defeat on his record, contentious as it is, and he can now go on and hopefully unify the division. I mean, there's a lot of good fighters at 126 pounds, but I don't think Kid Galahad, or Barry, to give him his real name, would look out of place against any of them. So good luck to him going forward. On the flip side of that, I don't want to say from the sublime to the ridiculous, because it wasn't ridiculous, but it was painful to watch, and I'm sure painful to be in, particularly for Mark Bennett, was his defeat to Alen Babic. Retirement at the end of round 5. I thought the corner should have pulled him out a lot earlier. I know you don't want to pull your fighter out, you know, in round 2 or 3 of a scheduled, I don't know if it's an 8-rounder or a 10-rounder, and I can understand why they didn't. And the general reception across social media and on the commentary team seemed to be that it was superb entertainment for everyone watching. And I kind of understand that, but for me, I found it very uncomfortable. Babic is not the biggest guy, but he punches with authority and accurately. And he was dominating the fight after the first 2 rounds. He was clearly in the lead. And he didn't punch quite hard enough to get rid of Bennett. And Bennett was a tough, strong, big guy, you know, very, very game. He was never going to quit. Babic wasn't able, for whatever reason. Maybe he put too much into the early rounds and he needed to take some time off to, you know, get his second win. But he was never able to get rid of him. The referee never found the right sustained level of punishment to step in at any particular time. And all those things combined to create something that was very dangerous in my view, because when someone gets taken out early, and we'll talk about Nick Webb because that happened to him shortly, although it's never nice to see a nasty knockout, especially if you're a fan of the losing party, they've been wiped out. They've only taken 1 clean punch in that fight. With the fight between Babic and Bennett, Bennett took a hell of a lot of punches to the head, clean headshots. And because they weren't enough to take him out, or the referee didn't judge he should be stopped and the corner didn't pull him out, he just took more and more round after round. And people talk about, you know, CTE and dementia and all those sort of problems coming from too much sparring in some cases, because that's where you take the most amount of headshots. But this was with smaller gloves, no headgear, and just taking shot after shot after shot. And for me, after round 2 even, it became uncomfortable. And I felt he should have been pulled out earlier. And I know a lot of people say, no, you know, it's great to watch, really enjoyed it. And the commentators likening it to, you know, when Homer Simpson takes up boxing, famously in The Simpsons. And I get the kind of element to it where it's enjoyable and entertaining, particularly for, you know, if you're not a purist, if you just like to see 2 big guys smashing into each other, that's fair enough. But yeah, it wasn't for me, it's fair to say, and I would have liked to have seen it ended earlier. And I'd also like to see Babic take a step up now. You know, just because he couldn't get rid of Bennett doesn't mean he's not a skilled fighter and a dangerous, powerful fighter. And I'd like to see him get a genuine test in his next fight. So let's hope that happens. So I mentioned Nick Webb there, wiped out in round 1 by Fabio Wardley, who successfully retained his English heavyweight title. But not without success. For a 1-round fight, it was actually very entertaining. And there was plenty of skill involved as well. It wasn't just, you know, 2 men whacking each other for 3 minutes. You know, there was actually a bit of nuance there, bit of setting traps, some skill to watch. But ultimately, Webb came out from the gates very, very fast, landed some clean shots early, got Fabio's attention. I wouldn't say necessarily hurt him, but certainly got his attention. And just like against Eric Molina, but much earlier in the fight, he was spurred into action and looked more annoyed than anything else, and quickly turned the tide on Webb. And once he turned him in the corner, unloaded and had him in real trouble. Bit of controversy over the referee here, because there was a point where Webb, under fire, appeared to be held up by the ropes. He was kind of sitting on the bottom rope. And in my view, because the ropes prevented a knockdown, the referee should have stepped in and given Webb the 8 count. And I believe, I haven't checked this on BoxRec, but I believe it was quite near the end of the round as well. So if he got the 8 count, survived till the end of the round, I'm not saying he would have turned the fight around on one. I still picked Wardley to win when I did my predictions. But I think he would have at least had a chance to make the contest go a bit longer and work his way back into it. I think the referee took that chance away from him by stopping the fight, ultimately, rather than administering a count. But it's quibbling. I think Wardley would have gone on to win. I think he proved in the short time it lasted, the more explosive, accurate, and skillful kind of, not necessarily skillful, but more aware boxer. He seemed to be more aware of where he was in the ring, what Webb was doing. He seems to have a keen eye despite being in the middle of a storm. Whereas Webb, there didn't seem to be as much, much strategy behind the execution, particularly once they started exchanging. So, yeah, well done to Wardley, and he can now go on perhaps once the British title becomes vacant, if it hasn't already, perhaps vying for that vacant British title. I know him and Nathan Gorman, that's a fight that's been talked about for a while, but Wardley certainly didn't do much wrong in the brief time the fight lasted. We also saw Johnny Fisher get a good win on the undercard. He's showing improvements all the time. Definitely a more measured performance from him, but still got the stoppage. Akif Fiaz came through a tough fight in his own right, looked good doing so. And I didn't catch the Ebony Bridges Bet Connolly fight. I know Bridges won by stoppage, but it was on the YouTube portion of the show. So ironically, I didn't see the YouTube portion, given I'm running a YouTube channel. But yeah, my son didn't go to bed early enough for me to watch that one. But I'm sure I'll catch up on it. But well done to her as well. And we'll look ahead on Thursday in FlexPectations to the final week of Fight Camp. Joshua Buatsi headlining against Richard Bolotniks. Really appreciate your time as always. Now I'd like to hear what you thought of the show, particularly how you thought Galahad's performance measures up against the other champions at 126. How far can he go now? And also your views on the Babic thing. Am I being a killjoy? I probably am. But am I being a killjoy and just, missing the point? There's a place in boxing for two guys just to beat the holy hell out of each other for our entertainment. Or am I right in thinking, it's a dangerous, career-shortening beating, potentially? Let me know what you think in the comments below and I'll respond to some of them. I'll be back, as I said, on Thursday, 4:30 PM, and then the following Monday at the same time for the next reflections. But really good to speak to you all, and let's do it again soon. Cheers.